privilege represent this part of Lincoln, the northwest part of the city, downtown, and everything north and west from essentially Lincoln High School. So glad that you're at this event. Welcome to Lincoln. If you're from elsewhere, Lincoln is, I think, doing some really, really good things, and this is one of the areas where I think we're on a positive track. And we're seeing great partnership with the city, with businesses, and with great nonprofit organizations who are engaged in important business relative to sustainability. We're in a 2-year budget cycle, and we just went through that mess last summer. And probably the most contentious issue that we had in the Lincoln City Council was, in going through the budget, concerned our landfill and expenses relative to the landfill, the need to replace equipment, very, very expensive equipment. As I recall, one piece of equipment was something like $750,000, and that's a lot of money. And so, just thinking about that, okay, what we're spending on the landfill and then extending the life of it. What is it that we need to do in terms of city policies and rates and all those issues that helps to further the goal that we have of sustainability. And last night, really appreciate the panel that was here. A lot of things spun through my head as those questions were being answered. Methane gas, for example, we are collecting methane gas at the Lincoln landfill, and it's fortunate because there's a power station right next to the landfill, so that gas is being transformed into electricity just right there. So that's an encouraging thing that's being done. The groundwater issue. Groundwater is something that we've been thinking about a lot for recent times, and our drinking water, and which comes from the ground, and all these issues and how they interconnect. And I just was really fascinated to think about that, and the fact, okay, you feel kind of safe when you put these liners. Well, yeah, rodents or whatever, land shifts, and they aren't going to be, it's not going to be that way forever. So how do we do these things? How do we address them? A personal interest of mine has to do with glass. I live 2 blocks down the street, and I've gotten used to it after living downtown for 10 years, but when the garbage trucks come at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and hear them emptying out those dumpsters with glass clank, 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 and can't we do something else with that glass other than putting them in the dumpsters and hauling them to our landfill? And I've heard some ideas of what some other cities and places are doing that I think offer some promise for what we can do. So I just want to thank you, the organizers of this event, the participants for being here, because I think what you're doing is vitally important to not only to this community, but for all communities where you're from and our nation and our globe. So thanks very much, and hope that you have a wonderful day.
Well, I'm so excited that Carl was able to be here. He's actually attended some of our Green Team roundtables and has been a great supporter of WasteCap over the last couple of years, and we really appreciate that support. And I guess I live in your district, so he's my city councilman as well. So without further ado, though, I would really like to introduce Eric Lombardi. Eric and I attended a zero waste training event in Illinois a couple of years ago, and Eric was the keynote speaker there, and they did some zero waste community planning training, and that was where I really got the idea that, man, we should be doing this in Nebraska, and how do we bring zero waste to Nebraska? And so I called Eric and I said, okay, so you've got this 10-year bridge strategy, which we're going to hear about in just a minute. What do you do for 3 years before you start the bridge strategy, before people even know that they want zero waste? How do we get people to know zero waste? And that was really the beginning of us writing a grant application to the Environmental Trust and receiving that application. And Chris has done an amazing job working with the 5 communities that we're working with, and we're learning along with those communities because it's just so new in Nebraska. And as I was talking to people about our sustainability summit, I said, you know, zero waste is so new to Nebraska that we've had to bring people in from other states because we don't have a lot of people here talking about zero waste. And so we really hope that this summit and other events that we're planning in the future are going to change that. And Nebraska is going to be one of the areas where we really do embrace zero waste and its principles. And so we were really excited that we were able to get Eric to come here. He's been a wonderful mentor on our projects. And we've just really, truly enjoyed working with him and look forward to continuing that relationship. So Eric Lombardi is the Executive Director of Eco-Cycle International, and it is a project of Eco-Cycle in Boulder, of which did you create Eco-Cycle? No, just ran it for 24 years, that's all. But he did build it into the largest zero waste service organization in the U.S. with a staff of 70. Processing over 50,000 tons of diverse materials per year. And he has been an authority on creating comprehensive community-based programs and is often a keynote speaker and a consultant on social and technical aspects of creating zero waste or darn near society. So please help me in welcoming Eric Lombardi.
Let's make sure this works. Yes. Good morning, Nebraska. Neighbors, I'm from Denver. I grew up in Colorado, so we have a lot in common, actually. It's really a pleasure to be here today, and it's been a pleasure working with Carrie and her team for the last year. When Carrie was in Illinois, that was the beginning of something that was just starting to emerge, and that is sort of the mainstream states and towns of America started to wake up to this concept of zero waste. Before that, for the last, 96 is when myself and a small group kicked it off. It was the vanguard. It was the Californias, it was the Portlands, the Seattles, the Vancouvers, a few others. So we've been working with them for a long time, San Francisco, developing what is this concept zero waste? How crazy are we? How close can we get to zero? You know, we had all those questions. We've learned so much since 1996. We've learned enough, in fact, that Eco-Cycle's gone ahead and created this 10-year bridge strategy to a zero-waste community, which is at the base of what I'm going to present today. It's a starting point for any community in Illinois or Nebraska or Colorado or anywhere else. And that's sort of the context of what I wanted to present today was, you know, outside these doors, it's sustainability chaos. But I think inside this room, we can talk about a really good news story and opportunities for us to make progress and to do something positive. I remember, I think it was 14 years ago when I was in a particularly tough time, because when you're really deeply immersed in environmental issues, it's a pretty tough time to be working in this field. And I was very depressed. I stopped reading stuff about climate change because it was overwhelming. And we were getting attacked by a trash hauler trying to put us out of business. So I got a voicemail from someone, and they read a line from the Persian poet Rumi, and it said, "Just remember, if everybody tended the corner of the garden that God gave them, everything would be fine." And you know, that really took the weight off my shoulders, and I realized I just need to tend the corner of my garden. So that turned it around for me, and I want to share that thought with you today because I really think it's time for all of us to stand up and start tending our local gardens. These global issues are beyond our control, but local issues are not. And that's really what this is all about today. We can do so much. The recycling revolution in the 90s showed us, wow, you can shift the needle on society. Well, we've evolved the recycling thing into this thing called zero waste, and I'm going to tell you what that is today. And I hope that you'll all see the opportunity for you to go home and participate as a community member in getting your city councils to evolve with the thinking. And the big thought here is, in 1991, the big step forward was Integrated Solid Waste Management, ISWM, and that was a big step forward in 1991. But what it said was, let's do a little bit of landfilling, a little bit of burning, and a little bit of recycling. It was sort of a basket of opportunities. Well, now we've gone beyond that. And what we've gone to is a focus on getting as close to zero as we can. And that's different than an integrated approach. That's a focused approach. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I like this picture because to me, that one rock that the person's leaving is the ISWM rock, the integrated approach, and it's a little scary. They're going over to the zero waste future, and they can do it, but they have to make that jump. So let me jump into this. I'm going to demystify the concept that it's a big deal, and I'm going to hopefully inspire you to the idea that you can actually get involved and help your community get moving. Eco-Cycle, first, who am I? I've been at this resource conservation game for 35 years. I've been in waste for almost 30. We are a social enterprise. We're a double bottom line company. We've been financially self-sufficient for 25 years. We try to make 10% profit on everything we touch. We tell everybody that. Our books are open for the city governments and IBM and everybody else we work with, because we run trucks, we do all the stuff that a discard management company does, and the profits go into one of the biggest school education programs in the country, community outreach staff. We do a lot of politics because waste is actually a very political issue. So this is why we exist. We have a double bottom line. We exist in the same context you exist. The year 2014, there's some big things going on outside these doors. First of all, greenhouse gas emissions. I won't go too deeply into that, but it's a disaster, and we have got to get moving on this thing and start reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It turns out that zero waste is one of the fastest, cheapest ways you can get a community to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And I'll say a little bit more about that later, but I was involved in a study in 2008 called Stop Trashing the Climate. You can Google that report, excellent report, and what we discovered was that if we were to recover 90% of our discards, by the way, I have a market for 90% of what's in your trash can, okay? So if everybody's sorted separately and everybody participated, we can market 90% of what's in that trash can. So if we got to 90% and we reduce the mass of waste in this country 1% a year for 20 years, we would save the equivalent of 400 megatons of greenhouse gas emissions. That's the equivalent of shutting off 1 out of every 5 coal-powered power plants in the country. So we're not talking beans here. We're at the table. I like to say smokestacks, tailpipes, and trash cans are the 3 big greenhouse gas emission sources that we need to address. Peak soil in Nebraska, you live and die on the quality of your soil. It's all about a living soil. The difference between soil and dirt is microorganisms. How many do you have in the ground? And we're harvesting our food and we're not putting anything back in because we're landfilling our organics. Dumb. We need to put it back into the soil. Resource wars are here today. The Pentagon told us, the roots of conflict in the 21st century is going to be access to resources. If you look at the Middle East, you look at the conflicts going on in the forests of Indonesia, there's water wars going on. It's just going to get worse. All of a sudden, everybody in the world needs a job. Unemployment is an issue everywhere except for a few places. I just read yesterday Fort Collins has a 3% unemployment rate. So some places are cranking right along, but mostly creating work is a major social issue at this point around the world. So when you look at these 4 megatrends and you look at the connection with the current waste management system, it fails because landfills and incinerators make all 4 of those worse, not better. And I'm here to tell you, zero waste actually makes all 4 of those better. Lots of the world is hip to this idea that we're evolving. Germany, you can no longer landfill unprocessed mixed waste. You have to biostabilize it because when you bury organic waste, it creates methane. Bingo, big greenhouse gas. So that's spreading to all of Europe now, that German policy. Norway knew that there was externalities from landfills and incinerators in the form of groundwater pollution and air pollution, but no one was paying for it. And so they had their universities do a study and decided it was worth about $70 a ton. That's the surcharge on top of their $70 a ton tip fee. So it's $140 a ton to tip in Norway. In Nebraska, or locally here, it's $25. In the US, it's about 45. Where I live, it's 17. In Italy, it's 200. So there's all levels of landfilling, but we all use the same technology. So what's the difference? Social policy. California, leading the way once again. There's a state law that all businesses in California must separate for recycling and composting. This is amazing. I've been trying to get businesses to recycle for 30 years. The big ones do it. The big ones are doing a great job. It's the small ones that don't really see the economic benefit of recycling that are really lagging. So California just threw in the towel and said, you know what? We've created carrots. We've tried to educate you. You're just not going to do it. So we're just going to have to pass a law. I think this is a trend that's coming, and we're looking at a mandatory business recycling law in Boulder ourselves right now. And finally, producer responsibility. We need to work with industry to share the responsibility of the goods of our life, the stuff of our lives. They need to design it, not for the dump, they need to design it for recovery. So we need to work with them. They need to be held accountable in a legal way, because voluntarily is just not enough. We've been talking to them for 20 years. Now it's time, like in Europe, where it's legal. So things are changing all around us. So zero waste, like I said, we started the group in '96. I was the first national spokesman. Well, we were laughed at for the first decade. Even the recycling industry pioneers laughed at us and said, boy, you guys have gone too far now. But some of us knew, no, recycling is just the beginning. We don't have a waste problem. We have a resource opportunity. All of this stuff that we're throwing away is a resource, and it can be kept in what we now call the circular economy. So that all started to emerge. And by 2008, that's the year we consider our breakthrough year, Newsweek International said zero waste was the #1 fix for the planet. And that's me sitting on a bale of plastic bags that's going to go into plastic lumber. We like plastic lumber because it replaces old growth cedar and redwood. So there's a lot of energy now around this being okay to talk about zero waste. As a matter of fact, this was a real breakthrough. In the broad history of waste management, it might just be a true sea change moment. The National Solid Waste Management Association, which is the landfill and trash haulers trade association, came out with a statement supporting the concept of zero waste. They were the ones I've been fighting for 30 years. And they came out and said, yep, zero waste makes sense. That was 2010. But they put their own spin on it. They redefined zero waste. Now, zero waste has been defined by the Zero Waste International Alliance, a group I helped found in 2002 in Europe. And we came up with a 12-country peer-reviewed definition of zero waste. Well, the waste industry and some people in the States decided to change the definition, and they decided that if you burn trash to make energy, that counts as a zero waste strategy because you're getting something useful out of it. And we were very clear that thermal treatment of waste was not a zero waste strategy. Making energy out of waste, the only thing acceptable right now is anaerobic digestion. It's a low temperature conversion, and it captures the methane to make electricity. So zero waste to landfill, you're going to hear a lot about that. Zero waste to landfill is not zero waste. It's what we call zero landfill, and that's fine. Fine, if you want to go for zero landfill, but don't call it zero waste. So we've been, locked horns with them for the last couple of years over stealing our brand and our term. SWANA has agreed not to include waste to energy into any zero waste community definitions, and I thank John Skinner for that because he's the head of SWANA a few years ago. He finally got it, that we actually agree on 90% of the worldview. The only thing SWANA and ZWIA disagree on is the idea of burning trash to make electricity. Other than that, we're pretty much in sync with each other. So this was a commentary that I wrote in 11, and we're still fighting to protect the true definition. The city of Vancouver in Canada right now is stealing zero waste, and they're trying to build a $500 million incinerator and call Vancouver zero waste. So quickly today, I'm going to go over what is zero waste, why a 10-year plan, how do we get to 90%, and what do we do with whatever's left over. So what is zero waste? It's nothing more than the 3 R's taken to their logical extension. Downstream, you're going to recover everything you can. Midstream, longevity, reuse, repair, design. One of the more interesting and fun things lately are these repair cafes that are starting up. I don't know if anybody's heard of them, but on a Saturday, you get the old guys in your community with their toolboxes to come in, sit into a big room and people bring broken microwaves and lamps and stuff, and it's a real community event, and it's a real learning event, and it's a real connection with your stuff. Turns out so many microwaves are breaking because they're on an on-off switch. And the empowerment that a person gets, especially a lot of women who have never been taught how to turn a screwdriver, and because these guys won't fix it for you, they'll tell you what to do. And pull off the front of a microwave and go in and fix the switch, and wow, you just saved your microwave. Very empowering, very interesting, very fun. And then upstream, big deal. Zero waste purchasing. That's something we all need to start paying attention to. Government money is the largest source of cash in our economy, is government money, federal, state, and local. We need to start spending that money in a way that gives us the future that we want, and we're not paying enough attention on spending. And then product redesign with industry, producer responsibility, and new government rules so that the green companies make the profit, not the dirty. What zero waste is not, and this gets me in trouble at the waste conferences, it's not integrated solid waste management. We're saying that we're the evolutionary step beyond it. What we're about is a total commitment to get to zero. Every decision you make either gets you further or closer to zero. It doesn't require getting to zero. The international group decided that if you got your community to a 90% landfill diversion rate, you changed the world for the better. And it's so true. It's very hard to get to 50%. The US is at 33%. Boulder is just now getting to 50%. So to get to 90%, you really do shift the world. So you don't have to get to zero, and that helped the engineers get off our back because they were saying, you can't get to zero theoretically, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, zero waste or darn near, how's that? Okay, we're with you. And then zero waste does not accept the current waste to energy, which is mass burn, or the current landfilling practices, which buries biologically active stuff to create methane. So we want to see change. We want to see the elimination of all the high temperature burn stuff, just shut them down. And on the landfills, they are part of the future. Landfills are going to be with us, but we want to be able to minimize what we put in there, and we want to stabilize it so it's inert before it goes in. Here's the catch. If zero waste is so great, why isn't it happening? So we're talking about health and economic externalities from landfills and incinerators that aren't being paid for by anybody. Like Robert Kennedy said, show me pollution and I'll show you a subsidy. So what's happening is we've got significant externalities from those two technologies that aren't being paid for. So it dictates that waste is actually a social issue first and a market issue second. The waste industry in America does not like it when I say that commie pinko stuff. But you know what? In Europe, they don't bat an eye. They're like, of course it's a social issue. Of course they understand the externalities. We don't have an ecological economics on the planet. Nobody truly accounts for our relationship with the earth. No economic system truly accounts for our relationship. So if you can buy that, then we're talking and you're moving towards zero waste. If you don't buy that, then you're going to be stuck because the market, the laissez-faire free market is not going to get us where we need to get in terms of the environmental protection. Okay? Why a 10-year plan? Well, this is 10 years is ambitious. Let's say if Lincoln really decided to grab the bull by the horns, what could you do in 10 years? This would be very ambitious, but it could be done. There's been some amazing progress. One town in Italy in 3 years went from 20% to 70% landfill diversion in 3 years. So you can move quickly when you decide to. Prevent expensive mistakes. If Frederick builds this incinerator, the biggest one proposed in the history of America, then you can bet they're not going to be pushing for a zero waste future because they're going to have to pay the bank back. And that means that this beast is going to burn a lot of tons every day. And they're not going to be supporting diversion. So you don't want to make a mistake and put all your chips. Physical infrastructure shift. It's going to take time to build facilities. 10 years there are 6 facilities needed for every zero waste community. Regulatory changes take time. We need to have the public meetings. We need to have the discussions. We need an understanding to evolve about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and give the private sector time to adjust so that trash companies can become zero waste companies if they want. It's their choice. New companies can be born. Compost industry can grow. We need time for all of that to evolve. And then finally, the culture shift takes time. Yes, we've had a wonderful success in recycling at the individual level. I'll bet most of you in this room recycle. The last 20 years, though, we've put the burden on each of your individual shoulders too much. The real culture shift that we're beginning now is to change our community systems. It's kind of like creating bike paths and light rail in your town and all those big systems. Well, that's where we're at with the culture shift on discard management now. We need to create the systems to make it easier for everybody to do the right thing. And that's going to take money. So here's the big six that you're going to build. You all know the traditional MRF, that's traditional recycling. You all know organics recycling facility for composting. You all know construction and deconstruction. Well, you may not know deconstruction, but demolition certainly. Deconstruction is called the velvet crowbar, when you go in and you gently disassemble a building to get the reusable, the used building materials out to sell. There's a great business emerging across the country because the price of a new 2x4 is killer. But so many 2x4s are still good out of buildings that you take apart slowly. So there's windows, there's all kinds of stuff in a building that if you deconstruct it carefully. Number 4, you may not know the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. I'll say more about that in a second. Reuse and repair. I was talking about the repair workshops we're doing, the reuse, the used building materials industry is starting to really take off. And then finally, number 6, you don't know this one either. It's the residual sort and stabilized transfer station. Basically, it's the pre-landfilling step. It's the last stop for mixed waste before it goes to the landfill. I'm going to talk about that in 2 facilities I'm going to get into depth. Charm, we created the first Charm in 2001. What do you do with all that stuff that you can't put in your curbside recycling bin? Well, it turns out in some situations, that's 20 to 25% of the stuff going into the local landfill. We're talking block styrofoam. We're talking all kinds of stuff, right? So we opened up a center where we would take one new material a year and we would just create markets for it. And it has been wildly successful, a lot of fun. The community feels like we're moving towards zero waste every year, because every year we announce a new material. And we even got into things like yoga mats. We're the only one I know that is recycling yoga mats. And the way we do yoga mats is we found a local business that makes carrying cases for iPads. And the guy's cleaning up the yoga mats and cutting them and using the yoga mats as padding inside his iPad carrying case. So we've done cottage industry. We also do that with bicycle tubes. A woman's making waterproof bike bags out of bicycle tubes. So we're creating cottage industry right in Boulder out of this stuff. The neat part about this, though, is think about the block styrofoam you get when you buy a new TV. Well, it's bulky, right? Now think about a unit price. You don't have it in Nebraska, the pay-as-you-throw system where you get to subscribe to the smallest trash can and pay the littlest amount because you get a huge recycling bin for free. Well, it turns out that when you have a Charm system, you allow more people to use the small trash can because they don't have to put big block styrofoam in it. There is some place in town where they can make a Charm run, okay? So there's 3 of these in the country now. It's a non-profitable activity, but landfills don't make a profit either, right? When you drive through the gate of a landfill, you're going to pull out your wallet. They're going to charge you to use their facility. So we charge people $3, and we recycle what you bring in. So it's a good deal. There is the Materials Recycling Biological Treatment Report on our ecocycle.org website. This is following in the lines of the MBT technology in Europe. Basically, when we get down to that last 10%, we're going to want to sort it for any remaining recyclables, and then we're going to want to biostabilize any organics before we bury it. And that's all this facility does. One last thing it does that's pretty neat is it's a research center. So other than the wet organics that's going to get composted, we're pulling out the dry stuff, and we're finding items that are designed for the dump. For example, in Italy, the Zero Waste Research Center started pulling out these coffee capsules. And they found out, wow, there's a lot of these coffee capsules in the mixed waste. So they contacted Lavazza, the biggest Italian coffee maker, and said, your product's packaging doesn't fit into our local zero waste community system. And you need to work with us because it's possible we're going to ban the sale of your product in our towns. I mean, the Italians are like, they're strong that way. Well, Lavazza called them right back and said, we would love to work with you to figure out how to make our packaging more ecological. So they're in conversation right now about making all of those out of PLA so that they're compostable instead of landfillable. So this is a really fun opportunity, a way of inviting industry in and saying, you know what, your packaging doesn't fit our community system, so you're going to need to change your packaging. Okay, so once you built the infrastructure, you need to do policies and programs, and basically our 10-year bridge strategy has outlined the 25, it's a 3-phase, 10-year, 25-point plan. Of course, it's oversimplified, but it's the best, it's the learning that we've harvested over the last 15 years of all the leading communities. So these are the basics. You can get started with this generic plan, and then customize it, because as the old saying goes, all recycling is local. You're going to have your custom situation in Lincoln or wherever you live, but this is the starting point. So phase 1, getting to 50% landfill diversion, it's all about access. You got to build the infrastructure. You have to set the goal so everybody knows where you're going. You have to do universal curbside. Universal means everybody has a bin. Every house has a bin. Mandatory means people have to use the bin. So in phase 1, we're just saying universal. First, let's get the bins out there and do the education and give people the opportunity voluntarily to participate. Organics from single-family units, unit-based pricing, very important. CD&D, government leading by example. That's you working with your local governments to start showing the world how things happen. Zero waste events is an amazing way of showing people how a zero waste society works. You can get 40,000 people on a weekend coming through and produce a couple bags of trash if you do it right. So it's really, wow, it's an amazing educational experience because it's visceral. You live it. And then funding your community efforts, that's sort of a rule of thumb, $2 to get going, $2 per person per year. So if you're in a town of 50,000, you're going to spend 100,000 a year marketing the culture shift. Phase 2 is about getting to 70, 75%. And it's about participation, because now you've built the opportunity to access the facilities and the bins. So now we're going to require separated waste. Now you got the bin, and now you got to use it. And if you don't separate your waste, we're not going to pick it up. Then you're going to move into universal organics. Again, not mandatory, but universal for multifamily. Once you get the organics out of trash, you can let your trash can sit there for 2, 3, 4 weeks, because what's in it? Junk plastic. That's about all that's left. You've recycled and composted and you don't have much left. So you don't have to run the trash truck every week. There's big savings in that. And those savings can then be used to run the organic trucks, the composting. Increase the CD&D. Now you get into product fees and taxes. In Boulder, we just decided to, rather than ban plastic bags or single-use bags at grocery stores, we decided to put an environmental impact fee of 10 cents a bag. So it's not a tax because you don't have to pay it if you bring your cloth bag to the grocery store. And I have watched that program be so successful. So many people are bringing their cloth bags to the grocery stores in Boulder now. And, Boulder was already pretty conscious, but wow, it was overnight. It was like, wow, look at that. People don't want to pay a dime for their bag. I still pay a dime every once in a while for paper bags because I line some of my trash can. But when you're really composting, you don't have much goop. So you almost don't have to line your trash bags anymore either. $3, kick it up to $3 a year because, you're going to need more education. And the third phase, 90% and above, no one's there yet. This is fantasy land, so we're just imagining what it's going to take to really get to 90%. We've got things like mattresses. We got to get the mattress industry on board. We got to get the carpet industry on board. We got some stuff out there that the industry's not helping us with. So. Disposal bans at landfills, self-haul. We have a lot of problems around the country with self-haulers ignoring all of the local community rules. Who's watching them? So by the time we get up to these zero waste levels, we're going to have to, self-haulers are going to have to be part of the system. Source separation enforcement, waste reduction, zero waste labeling, so it's easier. Purchasing, big deal. And we're just going to have to really focus on mixed waste so that it's like we're phasing out mixed waste. I don't think there's too much of a problem in Nebraska with building incinerators, but a lot of people need to know not to let this the tail wag the dog here on your whatever's left, the residuals. Waste to energy in the marketplace today is mass burn. It's nothing more than a giant furnace and the stuff's getting thrown in there and it burns, okay? And 10 to 15% of it goes to the landfill as ash. So there is no such thing as zero waste to landfill. Even if you have a burner, you're still needing a landfill because you got a lot of ash. But it's funny because Wall Street, you can't fool Wall Street. There hasn't been a new waste energy facility in America since '95. There's been a couple expansions where they already had one and they built another boiler, Honolulu and Florida. But the reason is everything's changing in the discard industry. And to build one of these things, to pay the bank back on a $300 million facility, you have to have a put or pay contract. And that means the local government has to guarantee a minimum amount of trash goes to your burner every day. And if you don't give them that 1,000 tons a day, you're going to pay the equivalent of a per ton fee. So we actually are seeing towns that are doing good recycling not meeting their threshold to the burner and having to write a check to the incinerator company for just cash, just saying, sorry, we don't have enough trash to keep you solvent. We'll help pay your bank loan. It's ridiculous, especially in these times of change. You're going to hear a lot about conversion technologies, gasification, pyrolysis, plasma. These are not new. These have been around for 30 years. Everyone's trying to adapt them to the waste industry because the money's big in the waste industry. In America alone, it's a $55 billion industry. But you need to know right now, all of the conversion tech plants are bench models. They're all pilot demonstrations. There is no full-size commercial plant anywhere in the country. So if you build one in Nebraska, know that you're the guinea pig. And who wants to be the guinea pig? These things are very technical and very expensive, and they're not needed if you do zero waste systems. So just heads up on the conversion tech. You know, it's fascinating. I'm a technology guy. I'm fascinated by it. I watch it very closely. But it's not ready for prime time yet. And finally, you know, can these thermal conversion technologies coexist with zero waste? Well, here's a great quote from 2009. Lake County has a big incinerator. This is the public works director who all of a sudden wasn't, there's a disturbing trend of less waste. Well, yeah, because he's got a commitment to feed the burner for so much. And he said, so we don't want to turn off what we got going on, but we're also not promoting recycling in a big way right now. You think they're ever going to go for zero waste? No way. So they are not compatible with the zero waste vision, period. And just so you know too, it is the dirtiest, this is an EPA graph, burning trash in a mass burn incinerator is about the dirtiest way you can make electricity. All right? That's the facts. And the politics are that half of what's in your trash is considered biogenic, organic. So think about grass clippings, okay? So grass clippings, you cut them, you burn them, CO2 goes up, but then next year the grass grows again and absorbs that same CO2. So there's no net addition to the atmosphere. Okay, I'll grant you for grass clippings, that's true. But anything beyond that, it turns out that trees take 60 to 80 years to absorb as much carbon as they give off when you burn them in 1 minute. And with the way the climate's looking right now, this is a major mistake that the UN has made, and MIT has a paper out saying, we have to change this biogenic law because if we don't, we're going to clear cut the forests of the world because nobody has to count that CO2 from burning a tree. So keep your eye on that issue. It's developing. So right now we have 40% overcapacity on landfills in the US. So if we were to triple our recovery rate, go from 33 to 90, we wouldn't have to build a new landfill or incinerator for a century. And instead, what I think we ought to be building is this thing. This is a 20-acre zero waste park I designed for the island of Kauai in Hawaii. Their landfill was closing, and they wanted to build an incinerator. And it was going to be a $150 million incinerator. And I showed them, no, 20 acres, 6 facilities, $40 million. This park can handle 100% of your discards on Kauai. And we won the day. We stopped the incinerator. But then the mayor miraculously found another 5 acres to expand the landfill, and the crisis was averted. Really what he was doing was he was trying to get the citizens group to go away, go back to the beach, and because he had lost the fight to build the incinerator, which his brother worked for. But here's, I call this the new landfill gate, because we are going to have landfills. They're part of the zero waste future. I'd like to see these built at the gate of every landfill, so that each facility in here is going to either pay you or not charge you to tip or charge you a little bit for the 5 facilities where you've separated your discards, and then the last stop is that MRBT, and that's going to charge you, European rates, $150 a ton. So you're going to have a financial incentive not to go to that facility, okay? So I haven't built one yet. If anyone wants to build one in Nebraska, please let me know. I want to build one. Things to focus on right now, 2014, the evolution of where we are, we got to get organics out of the landfill. Nebraska led the way on getting yard waste out of landfill. Thank you. You were one of, I think, 20 in the country that do it, and that was really wonderful that you did that. By the way, your governor almost repealed it a few years ago. I remember we were in a fight, and it didn't happen, but that's fantastic, and now we've got to get the food scraps out and the paper out. Anything organic that's going to rot and create methane. Separation of waste has to be required. We've been doing the voluntary bit for 30 years, 40 years, and we're stuck at 33%. So it's time to just say, hey folks, it's not so hard to use 3 bins instead of 1. That's, you don't sort it, we're not going to pick it up. And then local climate action plans and jobs. It's really interesting that every community is coming up with a climate plan, and it turns out that a zero waste strategy is one of the more powerful things they can do, low cost, fast, effective, and it creates jobs. So these 3 things we should be talking about. We've got a couple of national campaigns going on the internet if you want to look them up about getting organics out of the landfills. Separated waste, there's a statement by Jack Macy in San Francisco. He said, we'd be at 90% if everybody participated fully. San Francisco's built the infrastructure needed for 90% landfill diversion. And now they claim they're at 80%. I think that number is a little squirrely, but they're on their way to 90%. They're doing everything right, so we're watching them. And this is interesting. Portland's climate action plan, the biggest impact reduction of greenhouse gases related to consumption. We call them consumption emissions. And it turns out that food and stuff, materials, combines to make somewhere between 43 and 45% of the emissions. So think about a power plant making electricity. Okay, well, it makes electricity and creates greenhouse gas, but why is it making electricity? What's the electricity being used for? Well, it's being used to support our consumption habits. So, of course, we're going to consume. We're consuming creatures. But how we consume has everything to do with how much greenhouse gas emissions there are. So if we consume recyclable paper and we paper 9 times, all of a sudden the emissions go down. We're still consuming paper, but our emissions are lower. So you follow that track. Same with food. So when you combine those 2, the consumption emissions, lifestyle changes have an immediate impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So in closing, why bother? Well, like I said, everybody needs jobs. 1.5 million new jobs are waiting out there. If America got to 75%, study just came out. That's a lot of jobs. That's 25% of Obama's goal when he took office 6 years ago. We buried $11 billion worth of recyclables last year. That's 11,000 zero waste millionaires. And that's the speech I give to business schools. Because the young engineer kids, they love the idea of making money, making $1 million and helping the earth. And there is wealth in the landfill that we can transition out. This guy over here, Dale Eckert, Nebraska boy, he's been working for me for 15 years. That's a compost truck that he personally designed for commercial composting. $250,000 truck. It's a whole new industry. Zero waste creates new equipment and new services. Why bother? Because it's cheaper. This study came out a couple years ago. 121 communities that have the 3-bin system. And here are the average numbers. The average collection cost was $22 a month for the 3-bin. To tip the organics was $44. To tip at the landfill was $61. To tip at the incinerator was $92. Oh, recycling's not on that list because you get paid for that. So recycling and composting is far cheaper than landfill and incinerator. I already mentioned stop trashing the climate, greenhouse gas reduction, closing down 20%, the equivalent of 20% of our coal-fired power plants. You know how hard it is? I tried to shut down the coal-fired power plant at Boulder. years. We spent years. You could spend a career trying to shut down one plant. So much easier. Let's do something positive. Let's do zero waste and come up with the equivalent savings of shutting down those plants. And finally, this is what really gets me up in the morning because I'm a father. I have 2 kids. There is blood in our trash cans. There's war all across the planet that's feeding our consumer societies. So when we take that cheap old wooden teak frame at Target and we use it and we just throw it away, it came from a rainforest in Indonesia where a village got razed and the people are now run off their land because they're deforesting Indonesia. The battles in the Middle East are all about oil. If there wasn't oil there, do you think we'd be there? Of course not. There's water wars. In the Central Africa, there's mineral wars. For the electronics in every one of our pockets, we've got a little piece of the Democratic of Congo in our pockets, in our smartphones. So when we use this stuff and throw it away and put pressure to go back into the jungle and get more, that's on us. So people are dying for our wasteful habits. So that's why, I call it an ethical and moral responsibility for us to do something. Remember, slavery didn't end because the spreadsheet said it should. Actually, the spreadsheet said, do more slavery. You make more money. But it had to end for ethical and moral reasons. And that's why we got to end this era of wasting that we've created since World War II. So we got to make compost, not war. And we can do affordable recycling for all. And that's all. The revolution's not as scary or hard. Stop buying stuff that's designed for the dump and require that everyone separates their stuff into resource bins. No more mixed waste. We can do it. Thanks to you. Thank you. Any questions?
We're all ready to just go.
All right.
Chris over here.
I'd like you to clarify about the pulling off of methane from landfills for energy.
The question is clarify about the technology of capturing methane that's leaking out of the landfills.
And part of that is,
Yeah.
if I understand it right, they pull off the methane from the cells that are closed in the landfill. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So would it be acceptable for those that are closed for us to pull it off, or?
Yeah. So without getting too geeky on you or too much technology, and there's maybe landfill people in here that know better than I. If I misspeak, let me know. But I've looked into this quite a bit because for a long time we thought capturing and burning the methane on landfills was a good thing. But you got to step back for a minute because actually the pollution prevention hierarchy says that you're supposed to prevent pollution first, remediate it second. So the way you prevent methane gas is the way Europe's doing it. You don't bury biologically active stuff, period. No gas created, okay? So that's the answer. Now, until we get to that day, we've got a bunch of methane being generated in these landfills. The big landfills now, by law, have to put in gas capture equipment. Without getting too technical on you, it's a tricky thing to do because you can't pull the gas out until there's at least over 50% methane, because if it's 40% methane and 60% oxygen, it's volatile. It can explode on you. So you got to wait until there's enough buildup in the cell. To get that buildup, landfills are built in cells. You have to close the cell. You have to seal it and let the rot kind of build up, and then you can put the straw in and start sucking it out. The life of a landfill has a beginning and an end, let's call it 30, 40 years. You've got this huge period up front where you're burying stuff and it's off-gassing, and then you close the cell, and then it's building up, then you tap the straw and you pull it, and then the methane goes down, so you got to stop tapping it, and then you're on the back end of the landfill and it closes in 40 years. When you look at the life cycle emissions of the period when you didn't have the straw in, there's some people that say that you're only capturing 20%. Now, when you have the straw going, you might capture 80%. A lot of people think, EPA says it's 75%, okay? At that moment of the landfill's life, you might be getting 75%. But if you look at the life cycle emissions of that landfill, It's far below 50%. The Europeans know that, and there's some in this country that say it's only 20%. So with those kind of numbers, I think we need to look at pollution prevention and stop burying biological waste. And not, yes, I'm glad we're capturing that methane, but no, that's not the solution. Yeah.
Can you expand a little on the politics of convenience? For instance, a lot of the same people in this room who now we're going to go encourage source separation, and the same people who've been encouraging the exact opposite in each household in order to get people to do recycling. What are the politics of changing that mindset with, not necessarily with leaders, but with consumers?
So everybody heard the question about the politics of convenience. I guess the first thing I'll say is, in my 30 years of experience, I have seen human beings respond positively when the system was put in front of them to recycle easily and it was understandable. There's something in us that gets it, and people want to participate. So when curbside is offered, when public recycling bins are out there, people are using them. We have an infrastructure deficit in this country. We don't have curbside still. That's thousands of communities. We don't have recycling or composting is just starting. So I think before we can answer that question about convenience, we need to make it convenient and watch people respond, and they will. People will recycle and compost when it's convenient and they understand. I agree it needs to be made easier, and that's been this whole shift towards single stream recycling, so you have one recycling bin. But it's okay. It's like I said, I'm a technologist. I run a $20 million single stream facility. I produce a great product, okay? It costs me more. Two stream, when I started, we sorted 8 ways, okay? Two stream was good. Fiber and container, for me, that was the easiest way to make money as a recycling processor. When it all got mixed, my costs went up double. Okay, so my margins are lower now, but I'm getting more tons because more people came into the system. They like the one bin, throw it all in. So I agree that we need to go that route because we just need to make it convenient and easy, and I think people will do it. They won't take extraordinary efforts. A lot of people, and that's the other thing. I've had Boulderites tell me, "Oh, Eric, you taught us how to recycle. Now you want us to get to zero waste? Give me a break." They're mad, And I'm like, no, you don't understand. If the community invests and gives you the infrastructure to sort your stuff, it's not going to be any harder than the recycling you're doing now. The only thing we're going to ask you to do is watch where you're spending your money. Don't give your money to the companies that are designing crap, designed for the landfill, okay? So that's kind of a consciousness shift we haven't gotten yet, is where's your money going? That's a very important point.
On your charm items, that was a great example on the yoga mats. Can you just give a couple other examples from your list of what you've creatively done to dispose of some of them?
We're the first company to actually make a profit recycling the block styrofoam that your computer and TV came in. We finally figured out how to do it. So it took us a couple of years of losing money and experimenting with technology, but now we're making money. And that stuff's getting 100% recycled back into all kinds of styrofoam products. Like I said, the inner tubes are going into waterproof bike bags. The computers, computer recycling, we know how that works. Tennis shoes are getting ground up with Nike. What else? Books. We've got all kinds of hardbound books. We have a bibliophile guy, a guy who knows books really well. He sorts them and sells them on the internet. Reuse is better. And then he sorts out the kids' books for us, which we give away 20,000 kids' books a year to schools and orphanages and hospitals. And then we grind up and recycle the rest of the books. What else do we take? We take so much. We take more single items than any recycler in the U.S. at this site. If you come to Boulder, you got to come to the Charm Center and see it. It'll blow your mind. We're working on mattresses and carpets. Those are the two biggies we're looking at now. There's some good mattress recycling programs starting on the West Coast, so we're watching their markets and how they do it. Carpets are still a big problem. We need industry to step up to help us with carpets. It's just, it's hard, but it's fascinating. And the saying is, if you get a pile big enough of any single item, somebody's going to want it. We built the facility on that belief, and so far it's been true.
Gene?
I've had recyclers comment that with pay-as-you-throw systems, the residual rate goes up with recycling. Residual is what is sorted and goes to the landfill goes up because people hide
Yeah.
their waste in the recyclables to get
Yeah.
the lower price rate. What's
Yeah.
your experience with it?
I don't have any hard data, but I think that's probably right. We've seen the residual rates go up with single stream. Not so much with unit-based pricing, but single stream, everybody was like, wow, anything can go in there. So now they're just throwing all plastics, everything in that recycle bin. But yeah, I don't doubt that that's true. People are hiding it, but you know what? 99% of the people are honest. They live with themselves, so that's kind of a paper tiger. You know, you'll have a few scofflaws, but mostly people are pretty credible and they do the right thing. My vision of the future, by the way, is 2 bins. Someday we're going to have a wet and a dry bin, composting and sorting for recycle. So I think that's where we're heading. So that'll be very convenient. You just got to learn what's composting, what is organic, and that's, you just make sure that bin's right, and then everything else goes over here. You don't have to think about it because we're going to have the facilities to sort it.
Gene Waters?
Eric, you alluded to the waste management hierarchy, and you had in one of your slides some information about how we purchase things, and you talked about us being a consumer society, and that, because we buy stuff, we have to deal with the waste that results. So would you speak a little bit to the strategy that you might suggest for people to consume less?
Well, okay, there's consume less and there's consume differently. So I think, first of all, there is no such thing as waste. It's a resource. So when you buy something, it comes in a package, and hopefully it's easily recyclable cardboard, because that stays in the loop. Most of it is hard to recycle plastic, unfortunately. So try to consume less if the manufacturer uses non-recyclable packaging. That sends a message. And even call them on their little number and say, I don't buy your product because of the package. And they will hear you. They do not want that to happen. Consuming less, you know, that's a very interesting discussion. I don't have the answer for that. I don't know many people that are just proliferate. Maybe, you know, me and my gang, we don't have the money to buy all kinds of stuff, right? So I don't see exorbitant consumption amongst my circle of friends. I don't see it in America. So when we say consume less, I'm struggling with what does that mean? Of course we're going to consume, but, you know, yes, we can take less showers. This shower every day thing is nonsense, right? But Americans got it in their head they shower every day, right? Europeans shower twice a week. You can tell sometimes. But, but seriously, that's consuming less fossil fuels and water to shower less, okay? So there's some things I get, but overall, I think it is a challenge about this consuming less, and I don't have the answer, but we need to have that discussion. Thanks for bringing it up.
Okay, I'm going to take one last question. Go ahead. Choose whomever. Doug?
Talk a little bit about resource recovery and the opportunities as well as some of the problems for avoiding the need to have to ship the plastics and the cardboard to China to get recycled.
Yeah. Everybody hear the question about, really the question is about how do we avoid the long haul to markets so that we don't send the plastics to China and all that other stuff. Okay, so first response is that the markets are global now. So America's 2 biggest exports are scrap paper and scrap metal. 2 biggest exports out of our country. We're considered the Saudi Arabia of waste paper. I'm not kidding. China and India cut down all their trees a long time ago. And one piece of American office paper is 5 times the quality of a piece of paper from India. You ever get a letter from a friend in India? You can see your fingers through it. When they mixed that piece with one of our pieces, they just doubled the quality of their homegrown paper. Second part of this answer, okay, so the world wants these valuable resources that we're just casually throwing away. There's huge market value, and I don't know, I would love to see them stay local. When I started in this industry, we had a lot more mills in America producing recycled paper. They've all shut down. or they just kind of technologically got left behind because no one was investing. All the new consumption is in Brazil, India, and China. And so all of the resources are being exported over there. Just like raw materials, virgin resources out of Africa and Indonesia are going to China, secondary resources out of Europe and the United States are going to China as well to make the products that then get shipped back to us. You need to understand about shipping. A study by David Alloway in Portland showed that how far can you ship a truckload of paper or a van load of plastics before you go negative on the environmental impact from shipping. And the results were rather surprising. You can ship stuff thousands of miles before you even get close because the energy savings from recycling are so big that, for example, from Boulder, when I ship paper to China, or actually not paper, but plastic, it goes on a train from Denver to LA and then on a ship from LA to China. Both of those are relatively low impact means of transportation. And the savings from recycling that 50 tons of plastic greatly outdo the shipping. So it's not a big concern, as big a concern as you'd think about shipping. What I'd like to see, of course, is local industry and local jobs. We'd love to do that, and CHARM is trying to do that cottage industry development, but creating local businesses through recycling is really a tough formula in our free market society. We would have to have much more social enterprise. I love social enterprise. I think that's a real growth opportunity in this country, is double bottom line public-private partnerships. And maybe I'll come back someday and give a whole speech on that, because I really think that's a door opening right now for local production and jobs, is the double bottom line legal company. And I have to shut up now. Thank you all.
Thank you.